my water just broke. I felt like things really intensified.
She was right there and she was coming.
It was an amazing feeling.
I'm gonna cry just thinking about it. I could feel her head.
We heard her cry. We were squeezing hands and she was screaming.
I'm Bryn Hunt Palmer, and you're listening to The Birth Hour. This podcast is designed as a safe place to come together and share childbirth stories. Stick around and join us to hear informative and empowering birth journeys from all over the world. I'd like to take a minute to talk about this episode's sponsor, Aeroflow Breast Pumps. Did you know that breast pumps and milk storage bags, maternity compression garments, even lactation education and support can all be covered by your insurance? Aeroflow helps millions of parents unlock these breastfeeding and postpartum essentials by working directly with your insurance company to get these free essentials shipped straight to your door. Aeroflow offers all major pump brands, including Medela, Spectra, Motif, Lancino, Amita, LV, Willow, and more. Visit aeroflowbreastpumps.com/birthhour to fill out their free and easy qualify through insurance form. Don't forget to use the promo code BIRTHHOUR15 in their online shop for 15% off all supplies and accessories. If you've got enough on your plate, why not let Aeroflow Breast Pumps help support you on your breastfeeding journey? At the end of this episode, I talk with Kate not only about getting her breast pump for free through Aeroflow, but also about taking advantage of their online lactation classes. So stay tuned for that conversation. Before we get to today's birth story, I want to talk a little bit about our online childbirth course. It's called Know Your Options, and this is the course you've been looking for if you just have that gut feeling that you know you should be taking a childbirth course, but maybe the one that's being offered to you by your care provider is not exactly what you're looking for. It might be more catered towards the type of birth they want you to have versus making you informed of all your different options and how to address different things that happen in birth, because as this podcast has shown us, birth is very unpredictable. So we would love to have you check out our 12-module course. You can go to thebirthhour.com/course to see detailed outlines of what is included in the course. You will also get a bonus course called Beyond the First Latch that is an additional 6 modules all about pumping, feeding your baby, going back to paid work if that's part of your plan. And we have a special coupon code for you. It's 100OFF for $100 off enrollment. Again, that's thebirthhour.com/course. Another way you can get involved with the Birth Hour community is by joining our Patreon. This is where you pledge your support of the Birth Hour at $5 a month or more, and you get perks in return, like access to all of our archived episodes. That's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of episodes. We've been putting out birth stories since 2015, and those are all available in our archives via Patreon. And you also get access to our private Facebook community, which is a really great group of people who are there to support you, become friends, and just encourage you on this journey through parenthood. So find out more about that at patreon.com/birthhour. Today's birth story guest is Sylvia, and she has an unmedicated hospital birth to share with us. Hi, Sylvia. Welcome to the Birth Hour. Thank you for coming on the podcast.
Thank you for having me. I'm very excited.
Awesome. Well, before we get to your story, can you tell listeners a little bit about you and your family?
Yeah, sure. So my husband's name is Nick. We both grew up and live here in Southern Indiana. It's just a little bit north of Evansville. That's the most major city close to us. And we got married in March of 23, and we have a 1-year-old boy right now, and we are expecting our second baby this summer.
Oh, congrats on that.
Thank you.
All right. Well, let's just go ahead and go back to finding out you were pregnant, getting pregnant, anything you want to share there.
Sure. So before we got married and everything, we knew we wanted to have kids right away. I was 26, he was 25. We were both just ready to start a family and everything. So right after we got married, we started trying. And I actually had my period the day of our wedding, and that was the last period I had. So we got pregnant right off the bat. And I had never missed a period before. So when I did miss a period, I was kind of like, I'm pretty sure I'm pregnant. And I waited maybe another week or so before I actually took a test. And then it was positive, and it was pretty anticlimactic. I just went and took a test, came back 5 minutes later. It was positive. I came back in the room and I was like, yep, we're pregnant. And then we told our families right away. And on my side of the family, this was going to be the 12th grandchild. So
wow.
Yeah, we have a lot of kids on that side of the family. But to tell everybody that we were pregnant, I made all the kids T-shirts that said Dirty Dozen. I had a shirt that said Dirty Dozen on it too. Yeah, so that was kind of funny. And then on my husband's side, it's the second grandbaby and the first grandson. So kind of best of both worlds there.
Yeah, very fun. All right. And then how did you feel throughout pregnancy? How'd your pregnancy go?
My pregnancy, I felt like it was pretty typical. I definitely experienced the nausea, the morning sickness. My morning sickness lasted longer than I wanted it to. I was still having morning sickness till like about 18 weeks or so. But then it finally seemed to let up. My appetite was pretty non-existent that whole first trimester and into the second trimester, but it finally did come back. And once it did come back, then I experienced that like getting full really fast and feeling kind of nauseous after I would eat. So that was always really annoying, but do what you can there. And then I would say the most annoying symptom I had was I developed carpal tunnel during pregnancy. And I did not know that that was a thing that could happen. And I worked as a hairstylist before and during pregnancy. And so I would be working on a client and my hands would like go numb and be kind of tingly while doing someone's hair. And that was really frustrating. And I remember telling the nurses about it and they would just kind of say, oh yeah, that's normal. And that made me so mad. But I eventually was able to fix it. Like it kept being that way until like 6 months postpartum. But I just did like nightly massages with that Arnicare gel that they make, and that finally helped resolve it.
That's good.
Yeah. Other than that, it was just really typical, honestly.
All right. And then what about planning for your birth?
So my mom, she has 4 kids, and she did all of her births unmedicated. So in the back of my mind, I always thought like, well, if she can do it, I can do it. And so leading up to like planning for birth and everything, I was really hoping to go unmedicated. So I found out pretty quickly that most people said going for an unmedicated birth, it's way more mental than physical. So I prayed a lot. I read a lot of books. I listened to the birth hour constantly. I talked to my friends and my sisters who all had children, just asking them for advice, anything that they experienced, that sort of thing. One of my friends actually was willing to send me a video of her birth, and from a good angle. And but you see her son being born in the video, and I asked her, I said, can I show this to my husband, Nick? And she was like, oh yeah, for sure. And when I showed it to him, he looked kind of freaked out, and he was like, oh my gosh, why is the baby purple? Is it okay? And I was like, yes, it's okay. Like, that's normal. And I'm really glad he got to see that, because I think
that's what I was just thinking.
Yeah. So that was really good preparation there too. I also downloaded the Christian hypnobirthing app, and I would do that breathing exercises and listen to those like basically every night before bed. I would do pelvic floor exercises before bed. And then I also followed some pregnancy workouts through Nourish, Move, Love, and those were really, really helpful. But yeah, leading up to it, I was just really hoping for unmedicated, go into labor at home and just kind of hoping for a very natural birth in general.
All right. Well, anything else from pregnancy you want to share?
So as far as like, I did want to mention this. So for like going to doctor's appointments, around here, it's going to a hospital. That's kind of like the only route anyone really takes as far as I knew then. I had never heard of anyone, like no one around here that I knew of even used a doula. Nobody did home births. There are no birthing centers that I know of. It's just a hospital. There's like 2, maybe 3 hospitals where you can go. So that was, in my mind, my only option. So I started going to appointments, and at our first anatomy scan, they said, everything's normal, looks great. And then at my next appointment, she said, well, you're measuring kind of large, so we'd like you to come in for a growth scan. So I said, okay. And at that next growth scan, I think I was 27 weeks. They said they found a renal abnormality. And so they sent us to a maternal fetal medicine consultant and did another scan. And they said that the scans were just showing that his kidneys, and we didn't know if it was a boy or girl at this point, but they were saying that his kidneys looked enlarged and that they weren't the right color on the scan, which it's only black and white, but they were saying, like it should be darker and it's showing up a lot brighter. Basically, long story short, the doctor at the maternal fetal medicine place said, your child has kidney disease. And we were like, can you tell us more about that? And they were basically like, well, we won't be able to completely confirm it until he's born, but we're telling you right now, we're like 100% positive he has kidney disease. So that was really hard. And I remember one of the consultants telling us, like, how many kids are in your family? And we said, there's 11 grandkids on our side. There's another one on his side. And she said, oh yeah, well, with that many children, them all being healthy, it makes sense that one of them would not be totally healthy at some point. So it was like, they're basically telling us, like, sorry, but you're the unlucky one or something. And
yeah, the odds were against you. That's not helpful.
Yes. And so that was not fun. So they had us come back it was at least every 2 weeks to come back for another ultrasound to check on everything. And every single time it was the same response, like, well, it's functioning great. Your fluids look great, but it's still enlarged kidneys and they're not the right color. Even though they kept telling us that like something was wrong, we definitely held on to hope that he was healthy because everything was functioning correctly. But that was definitely the scariest part of the pregnancy that we went through.
Yeah, like very scary information to get and not a lot of facts to back it up. That's so stressful.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. So I'm guessing we'll hear more about that after baby's born.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, let's go ahead and hear about how the birth started for you.
So it was a Sunday. I was 37 weeks and 1 day on this Sunday. And we went to church, and I remember at church, I like during Mass, I was just praying and I was like feeling kind of emotional about everything. And as we were leaving church and getting in the car, I was overcome with this really intense emotional wave. And I just started crying. And I was telling my husband, Nick, just how like nervous I was. And also I just started thinking about how many things could happen. Like, even if our baby was healthy, what if the delivery didn't go well? What if something happened to me? Or what if something happened to him shortly after having a baby? And it just, like, all of these emotions just came flooding over me. And I was just super emotional. But in the back of my mind, like, I still thought I had like 2 or 3 weeks, if not more, before this baby was coming. So I didn't take it as a labor sign in any way. But that was definitely the beginning of it. And then later that day, we had a Christmas party to go to. This was in December. And at the Christmas party, I had a few relatives be like, oh, how are you feeling? And then they would be like, you look kind of swollen. And I was like, wow, thanks. Thank you so much for that. And looking back on it, that was the only time anyone ever really said something like that to me. So my body was definitely going through something.
Yeah.
And everybody at the Christmas party, they were like, oh, well, will we see you at the next one? And I was like, well, if I still look like this, I'll be at the next one, And definitely wasn't. And then the rest of the day was really normal. I still had about maybe a week left of work that I had planned. I was working as a hairstylist, so I still had appointments through the rest of that week. And once I was in labor, I had to text my clients and tell them, hey, sorry, I'm not going to make it. But so the rest of that day was pretty normal. We went to sleep at like 9 or 10. My husband had to get up early for work the next morning. So we went to sleep, and then around 11 o'clock or 11:30, I woke up and went to the bathroom. I went to go pee. And when I got to the toilet and I turned the light on, my pants were just soaking wet. And I pulled them down, and there was this big pinkish white like mucus glob in my pants. And of course I think like, whoa, is this my water breaking? I'm also like, I'm only 37 weeks. Like, there's no way. And I'm a first-time mom. I was kind of expecting like to have to go in and be induced because that's what my doctor kept bringing up. Especially with this whole like renal anomaly they kept bringing up. And so when my water broke, I was stunned. And I also had 0 contractions up until this point. And my water breaking first, I never expected that. Like, I had thought of getting induced, having contractions first, maybe them breaking my water, all of those things. And my water breaking first was not something that had crossed my mind. So I was just blown away. But when I finally came to terms with it, I called my sister first, and she was like, yep, that's definitely your water breaking. That's your mucus plug. And so by this point, my husband had like woken up and come in the bathroom and then like, is something wrong? And I was like, my water just broke. And he was like, are you okay? I was like, yeah, I'm fine. I just like, I don't know. Like, I think that's what it is. And I'm still leaking a lot, but nothing else is happening. So I put one of those diapers on and we went back to bed. And I actually went back to sleep in like the child pose position, I think is what it's called. So like my butt was up in the air. And I don't really remember what my reasoning was behind that. I think I was just trying to get the baby in a good position, but I slept the rest of the night that way. So then we got up the next morning and I still wasn't having any contractions. Like, not that I could really register, at least. I was having maybe some of those like really, really mild contractions that just felt like gas. But other than that, I was not experiencing anything. So Nick actually decided, you should just go to work because I don't feel like I'm in labor. So he went to work. I called my mom and my mother-in-law and told them both, hey, we're pretty sure my water broke last night, but nothing else is happening. So I just wanted to kind of like keep you in the loop. And they were both like, oh, wow, are you going to go to the hospital? And I said, I don't think I'm going to go yet. Nothing's happening. So I'm just I don't really feel like it's real yet. So I was like, I'm not going to go to the hospital yet. And then I was like, I'm going to do all the things that they say to do, like keep myself busy and, just try to get things moving. So I took my dog for a walk, made myself some breakfast, and I was texting my husband, still nothing's happening. And it was like 9 a.m. or something. So then I called my sister-in-law, who's a labor and delivery nurse. And I was like, hey, I'm going to send you these pictures I took last night. I think my water broke. And I sent them to her, and she immediately is, Sylvia, oh my gosh, you need to go to the hospital. And I was like, do I really? Is it really necessary? So she's like, yes, go to the hospital. And I was like, okay. So I called Nick. He comes home, and I packed the hospital bag, and we decide to go to the hospital. It's about a 30-minute drive maybe from where we live. And I had listened to all these stories about, how horrible that drive is when you're in labor. And I'm sitting here like, nothing is happening. This is so weird. Like, we're going to come home with a baby and it does not feel like it at all. It was just so different than what I had expected. We get to the hospital. We're like the only ones there. It was really, really quiet. We get checked into triage, and the doctors and nurses in there were really nice. And they were like, so what you here for? I'm like, well, I'm pretty sure my water broke. And they're like, okay, did it have any color to it? And I was like, yeah, it was a little pink, and I was like, and I'm wearing a diaper, like I've been leaking all morning. And they're like, oh, that's good sign. So they checked me and they're like, yes, your water definitely broke. This is amniotic fluid. And they're like, have you been tested for strep B? And I was like, I'm not sure, because all of my appointments were really quick and I was mostly getting ultrasounds. And they're like, okay, well, we're going to go ahead and test you. We'll do a rapid test. I didn't learn till later that most of the time those tests take like days to come back, but they did a rapid test apparently, and they said, yes, you are positive, so we're going to go ahead and get you started on antibiotics. And I've more recently tried to educate myself more on that, because I just took people's word for it. And like my sister-in-law, who said like, yeah, when you're positive, you get antibiotics. And that's just what I'd heard from my other sisters too. So I was like, yeah, okay, So they give me an IV with antibiotics, and they said, okay, we're going to do a cervical check. And I was 3 centimeters dilated and 80 to 90% of face, they said. And they had hooked me up to the monitors, and they said, are you feeling these contractions? And I was like, I literally cannot, I would have never known I was having contractions. I'm not feeling anything. And they were like, well, okay, well, you are dilating. So we're going to go ahead and get you checked into a labor room. So I said, okay. So we go to the labor room. I think it was about maybe 12:30 when we get to the labor room. And we're just kind of hanging out in there. And I kept telling my husband, I was like, this feels so weird because I'm not like in pain. Like I'm not feeling anything. This doesn't feel like labor. And he was like, yeah, it kind of feels like we're on vacation or something. All these people are coming to offer us food and stuff. I was like,
room service.
Yeah. And he was like, we got cable. And I'm like, yeah, this is great. So we're just kind of hanging out. And then the doctor comes in, and she was really, really sweet. And she was not the doctor I had been seeing. She was on call or whatever. And she said, so when did your water break? And I told her, oh, last night. And I kind of fibbed, honestly. When I woke up, it was like 11 or 11:30. And I told her, like, oh, sometime in the middle of the night. Like, I didn't want her to think, like, I didn't really want her to have that timestamp. But it was already past noon at this point. She goes, well, okay, well, it's been about 12 hours. So my recommendation would be that we start you on Pitocin, but it's totally your call. And I really, really appreciated that. And me and my husband had both read the Natural Hospital Birth book, because that is a great resource for anybody birthing in a hospital. And so we both immediately were like, yes, can we please have another hour or so before we make any decisions? And she was like, yes, but I just want you to know we are already past that time frame where we really need to get things going, but it's your call. And I was like, okay. So she gave us another hour. We walked around. I bounced on a yoga ball. I did some lunges, and I just sat around for a little bit. I just kept telling Nick, I was like, there's really nothing happening. Like, I'm not feeling anything. So I think it is the right decision to just go ahead and start Pitocin, because if we're going to be here and we're going to have a baby, I mean, I feel like I should just get this going. So when they came back in about an hour later, she asked me, she said, so how are you feeling? I said, I'm not feeling anything. So if we're going to do Pitocin, I'm fine with that, but I want to start it at the lowest level possible. And they said, we can do that. That's fine. So they started me, and I wrote this down. It was at 220 when they started me on Pitocin, and it was at the lowest level. It was at a level 1. I remember them telling me, I don't know if this is the same for all hospitals or whatever, but she said, we can amp Pitocin up to a level 24, and we're going to start you at the lowest level, which is a level 1. And I said, great. So they started me at a level 1, and she said, I'll come back every 30 minutes, and if you're not feeling anything, we'll just increase it by 1 level. I said, okay, sounds great. So every half hour she came back in, and, after that first half hour, she said, how you feeling? I said, I might be feeling something. I don't know. Doesn't feel like much of anything. And she said, okay, I'm going to up it by 1 level. And I was like, okay. So they up it. And then it was about the 3rd or 4th check-in where she came back, and I was at a level 4 at this point, and it was about 4:30. And she says, how you feeling? I said, I'm starting to feel this. I was like, I can still talk through it. I can manage very well, but I'm definitely feeling contractions now. And it was all in my hips. I was really expecting contractions to be in my belly, but it was all in my hips. So I was definitely feeling it. And she was like, okay, great. We won't up the Pitocin anymore. We'll leave you right here to level 4 for now. And I was like, okay. And then around 5 p.m., they had the doctor come back, and she said, how are you doing? And I was like, oh, I'm doing good. I'm definitely feeling these contractions now. And she said, do you want me to go ahead and check you again and see how you're doing? And I was like, sure. And I'd heard from a lot of these episodes, the number can really freak you out, but I don't know. I felt like things were happening. So I was like, go ahead and check me. I'm going to be fine no matter what. If I haven't progressed yet, I can do this for a while. So I'm okay. And she checked me, and she said, feels like you're at a 6. And I was like, dang, okay, this is great. And they were like, yeah, you're definitely progressing. And I remember one of the nurses came in, and they said, oh, is she does she have an epidural or anything? And they were like, no. And she goes, and she's at a 6, and she's not even screaming yet. And I was like, oh no, I'm not ready for this apparently. And they were like, yeah, she's doing great. And then I also remember sending my sister a text right after they checked me, and I sent her a text that said okay, they just said I'm at a 6. It was I sent that text and put my phone down, and as soon as I put my phone down, then I went into labor land. It was right after that moment was when I really started to having to focus on these contractions. And just the way they felt, I really felt like I wanted to sit on the toilet the whole time. Like it felt like that feeling of needing to poop. And I've heard that a lot too, of people saying like, oh, when they say they need to poop, that's usually like about time to push. But for me, it honestly kind of felt like that the whole time. And they never told me what station my baby was in. And honestly, if they had told me that, I don't think I really knew enough about the stations to have registered that. But looking back now, he must have just been sitting pretty low because I felt like there was pressure there the whole time. So it was about 5 p.m. when they told me I was at a 6. And at some point when I started really having to work through these contractions, my husband had been doing the pressing on my hips, and that helped a lot. And then I was mostly just sitting on the edge of the bed and like leaning on him. I expected myself to want to like walk around more, but I didn't feel like I could let my body relax when I was standing up. So I mostly sat on the edge of the bed or on the couch or on the yoga ball. And then I could really just kind of keep reminding myself, like, relax your shoulders, just let it open. It has to open. And then at one point I don't know if I asked or if I just went, but I went and sat on the toilet at one point because I was like, even if I just go sit on the toilet and pee, I will be so happy to just release something because I just feel like that's what needs to happen. So I was sitting on the toilet for maybe, 5 or 10 minutes. It felt like a while, so it was probably like 10 minutes, but who knows. And one of the nurses came in and she kind of looked at me and I was moaning a little bit and she goes, okay, let's go back to the bed now. We definitely don't want to have a baby on the toilet. And I was like, okay. I was like, this feels right to be on the toilet, but I understand what you're saying. Okay. So we go back to the bed and one of the nurses, I was still doing like the slow breathing and she kind of was like, I want you to try breathing like the quick in and then out. So she was, like, and so I started doing that, and that did help a little bit. It was nice just to like kind of change it up, I guess. And then they said, do you want to try the peanut ball? And I was like, oh yeah, let's do the peanut ball. And I don't know why, but in my mind, I thought the peanut ball was going to like make me more comfortable. No, the peanut ball 100% like put me through the rest of transition, I'm pretty sure, because as soon as I was in that position, that's when I like started like basically screaming. Like, I was always trying to stay low with it, but I was like making a lot of noises at that point. And that moment, I remember one of the nurses, she was about my mom's age probably, and she was just really, really sweet. She had a very comforting demeanor. And while I was lying on my side and just like starting to really struggle with this, like she came up to me and she held my hand and she said like, you're so close, you're almost there. And that was the most vivid memory of my labor. And I've told my husband before, I was like, when I think of my guardian angel, that is who I think of. Like, that's the image in my mind because it was just so comforting for her to hold my hand and say like, you're almost there. And it was just so nice. Mm-hmm. But they checked me one more time and they said, okay, you're basically all the way there. I think they might have said that I had a cervical lip. I don't remember for sure because I remember her saying something like, there's just a little bit there or something like that. And she was like, but I can probably just kind of like push it out of the way is basically what she said. And I was like, okay. And she goes, are you feeling ready to push? And I was like, oh my gosh, yes. I was like, I've been ready to push this whole time. And she was like, okay, well, if you're ready to push, like, you just let us know. And they brought everybody in and, they threw the stirrups up or whatever. And at this point, I could really feel him like descending. Like, it had to have been the fetal ejection reflex that everyone was talking about. Cause I was like, yeah, if you hadn't asked me, it was going to happen anyways. Cause I'm definitely like, my body is starting to do something and I'm not trying. So, they were like, okay, you're going to breathe through it. And I thought they were telling me like to like breathe out as I was pushing. And the first couple pushes, they were kind of like, okay, no. They were like taking a really deep breath and then bear down for about a count to 10. They were like, we'll count with you. And they were like, and then you can release the breath. And after I did that once, they were like, yes, that was great. That was great. So the coaching definitely was helping me because I had no idea what I was doing, but I could feel everything. So I was like, it felt kind of weird because I almost felt like I was working against my body a little bit. Because I was like, I don't feel like I need to be doing all of this. Like it was already happening. But I could also, like, when I would bear down, I could tell that it was like making progress. But then at one point, it was probably on like the 4th or 5th push, I held my breath. I like started pushing before the peak of the contraction, and I like almost passed out. Like I could feel myself like almost passed out, and it really freaked me out. And I kind of like went, whoa, 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 whoa. Like I like was like looking for my husband. So they like came and put a washcloth on my forehead and just left it there for the rest of labor. But that was really scary because I've only passed out like once in my life. And that feeling was just like really scary because I was like, oh no, it's happening. Like something's happening. It's not right. And, but that just happened the one time. And then they were like, okay, wait till the peak of your contraction to really bear down. And I was like, okay. So after that, then I really got the hang of it. And I think it probably only took about 4 more pushes. And between pushes, my doctor was doing like a massage and like stretching the canal, which I think helped. And then, about 4 pushes later, I think I only pushed for about 15 minutes total. And I kept asking my husband to like confirm that because I was like, it only felt like 15 minutes to me. Did it feel like that to you? And he was like, oh yeah. He was like, you weren't pushing for very long at all. And I was like, okay, because I did not have much of a concept of time after that point. But yeah, he was born at like, I think his timestamp was 6/17 or something like that. So from the time that I could really start feeling like contractions were starting to get harder to manage was about 5 p.m. and then an hour and a half later, and he was born. It was awesome.
Yeah, that's amazing. Sounds like you had good coaching there at the end because, that would be really, I don't think I've heard the pass out thing other than like with a cesarean or something like that. But that's scary. That's not the feeling you want to have for sure.
Yeah, and I think it had to have just been because I was like holding my breath for a little too long or something. I'm not really sure. Yeah. But they brought him up to my chest. His hair was dark and curly, and he cried for just a little bit. And my husband swears that his head was like super oblong. He was worried about that. And I always told him, I was like, no, that's normal. It's okay. His head will go back to normal. And they put him on our chest, and like we waited to find out the gender. So after they brought him up, Nick was like, oh my gosh, it's a boy. And we have 11 other boys in our family, grandchildren. So another boy was not a surprise. But they let Nick cut the cord, and we got our little golden hour afterwards, which was really, really awesome. I was expecting to nurse like immediately, but they didn't have anyone come in and try to like help with the baby nursing until about after the golden hour. So I just kind of sat there and held him for a while. So like once I had the baby, I was kind of expecting to, hold him and just be like, oh my gosh, this is my baby. And like, we knew we wanted to name him Patrick. So like, I already knew his name once we knew it was a boy, but it was only 6 weeks before Patrick was born that I had another nephew who was born. And when they put my baby on my chest, I kept looking at him and thinking of Leo, my nephew, because that was the most recent baby I had held. And I did not expect that. And it took me a couple days to really start being like, oh, this is Patrick, like Patrick, not Leo. So I know there's a lot of people who say they feel that immediate connection. And I definitely loved my baby right off the bat, but it took me a couple days to really get used to like, this is my baby. Like, this isn't my nephew.
Yeah.
This is my baby. This is Patrick. Yeah. But yeah, Nick did really, really good. He was definitely the best advocate for me. He was the one who was like, can we have another hour? And like, he did all the hip squeezes. And so my husband was a huge support to me through all of that. Whenever it came time to do nursing, and they did have a lactation consultant come in, our baby latched right away. And then they told me to start pumping. And I think it was because he was born about 3 weeks early. But I started doing like the triple feeding thing because that's what they recommended I do. And I was in the hospital and I was like, okay, like I'll just do it. Like I'll make you guys happy. But I really wish I hadn't done that because when my milk did come in, I feel like it came in like with a vengeance. Like I don't think I needed to do that extra pumping because he was nursing just fine I think they were just worried about him getting enough because he was early. But I had also been expressing colostrum before he was born. My nipples were leaky and stuff like around like 30 weeks probably. So I don't think I needed to pump. And now knowing that experience with the next baby, I don't think I'll pump even if someone recommended it. But I know some people definitely do have to. And then came all of the testing. So after we got our golden hour, after he nursed, then it was like all these doctors and nurses started flooding in, saying they needed to do blood tests. They took him away at one point to do a ultrasound on him because they wanted to check on his kidneys. And after doing the ultrasound on his kidneys, they brought him back and they said, everything looks normal. He's healthy. He's totally healthy. So that was a huge relief, but it also just makes me like, I just can't believe what we went through with all of those ultrasounds and everything while he was in the womb going through all of that.
Yeah.
But I'm so happy he is healthy. He's never had any issues with his kidneys. Even now, he's over a year old. So hope and pray that it stays that way. And then, yeah, he just had to get a lot of blood tests. They gave him a bath. We had to stay 2 nights because that was like the protocol for any babies born in that time frame. He wasn't considered premature, but he was a little early. So they made us stay for an extra night. But yeah, everything went really, really well with the birth. I was very blessed to have a healthy delivery. And I did have a little bit of tearing. I think it was a 2nd-degree tear. And that was probably the worst part of the postpartum experience, was just the healing from that. Took a long time to heal from that, longer than I expected. I was still using a peri bottle and all that good stuff until like 8 or 9 weeks postpartum. It took a long time. And I even went to like a 6-week postpartum checkup with my doctor, and she cleared me. Like, she checked me out and cleared me, and I kept bleeding after that. And so like around 8 or 9 weeks, I sent them a message and I was like, why in the world did I get cleared? Because I'm still bleeding and I still don't feel like I'm healed down there. And they basically were like, oh, well, you can come in and get checked again. And I was like, I don't think I'm going to because...
Yeah. Y'all are not the most helpful.
Yeah. So, and then, I mean, after 9 weeks, then it finally was back to normal. I felt like I could go to the bathroom normally again.
Did you have stitches for that tear?
I did.
Okay.
When she did it, I thought she told me that she only needed to do like 1 or 2 stitches, but when I looked back at my notes, it said I had a 2nd-degree tear. So I think it was just worse than she let on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's not fun.
No. And I don't know. That was really the only downside of postpartum. So overall, I feel very lucky.
Yeah.
Because I had a baby that nursed really well and was healthy, and we had a good birth experience and everything. So,
yeah. Well, thanks for sharing your experience. Do you want to share any resources?
yes. So I mentioned the Natural Hospital Birth book, which I've heard mentioned on here before, by Cynthia Gabriel. That's a really good one, especially if you're planning a hospital birth. Even if you're not planning on trying to like go unmedicated, it has, I think the best thing from that book was, if the doctors think it's an emergency, they won't give you an option. But if they're giving you an option, then take your time and talk about it and think about it. And then another book I read for Catholic moms or Christian moms, it's called Made for This by Mary Hasseltine. It's a really, really good one. And then I listened to the Birth Hour podcast and some of the evidence-based birth podcast, the Christian hypnobirthing app. I really liked that one. And then also the Nourish, Move, Love. She has a website with just tons of free workouts, and she has pregnancy plans and postpartum plans and everything in between. So that was a really good resource for me too.
Very cool. Well, we will link to all those. And then what is the best way for people to reach out to you?
Probably just through leaving comments on the show notes would be best.
Okay, perfect. All right. Well, thank you so much again for sharing today.
Oh my gosh, thank you for having me.
Okay, now I'm going to chat with Kate about Aeroflow breast pumps and getting your breast pump for free through insurance, as well as their free lactation classes that you can sign up for and your insurance will cover. Let's chat with Kate. Hi, Kate. Thanks so much for coming on the Birth Hour today to chat with me about Aeroflow breast pumps.
Yay. Hi, Bryn. Happy to be here.
Awesome. Well, you reached out via Instagram about Aeroflow and your experience with them, and I was so excited to talk with you. So will you just tell people a little bit about, how you found Aeroflow and the process you went through for using their services?
Yeah, for sure. So it was actually through the birth hour, through your podcast, that I heard about Aeroflow and decided to just fill out the form. It's like a very simple form you fill out online where you put in your insurance information, and then like Aeroflow does the rest.
Yeah.
And so they got me a free breast pump. I think it was the Spectra is the one that was the one I chose through insurance. But Aeroflow will actually show you like all of the different pumps available to you, how much they cost through insurance. Some of them, like, you do have to pay a little bit. And then they show you the ones that are fully covered. And so I decided, I chose the Spectra, and they sent it to me. And then I think I got like an email or a text that said like, hey, thanks for, using Aeroflow. You should also sign up for our lactation classes. And, you get tons of those sort of promotional emails.
Right.
And I didn't think much of it. I was like, okay, whatever, I'll take a look at this later. And then I started looking more into it, and I was like, oh, actually these classes look pretty cool. They were fully virtual and they were covered by insurance. And so I decided, I was like, what the heck, let's do it. And I signed up for, I think, 4 different classes. I only made it to 2 of them, but the 2 that I went to were Lactation 101 and Pumping 101. And they're just like such great classes. I was like so surprised by the quality of the classes. They're taught by, is it
IBCLC?
Yeah. And they just gave a ton of good information about like starting breastfeeding off right. And so it also would be helpful too for people who are newly breastfeeding, like just kind of work through some potential breastfeeding issues like latching or positioning. But yeah, I contribute a lot to my success. So my daughter is 4 weeks old now. And we had a pretty solid start to breastfeeding. I've been exclusively breastfeeding, and I contribute a lot of it to having that support from the class. The way the classes run too they're live.
Oh, cool. That was going to be my next question.
Yeah, they're virtual, so you can join via Zoom.
Yeah,
but they're live, and so the instructor is there teaching the course. They're also really just like super good teachers. Like I felt like the way they presented information was really good. They had tons of like visuals and videos, like live demonstrations where they have like a baby doll and they were showing different like positions and ways to get baby to latch. And so they are live though, so you can ask questions. And so you're able to like ask questions in the chat. You can, unmute and like have a conversation back and forth. So very like helpful for like if you have specific questions too about lactation.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. Especially like you said, like even after baby arrives, to be able to like look at the positioning of the baby doll and like position your own baby on screen and be like, like this, or that's great.
Yeah, it's really helpful. And like the Pumping 101, like this is my first baby and I had never pumped before. And so I have the same pump that they were using in the demo, the Spectra.
Oh, nice.
And so it was really cool I kind of like walked along with, did the demo along with them on the same pump, which was just really helpful, having never used a breast pump before. Like,
yeah.
They look kind of scary, at least to me. They looked pretty scary. And so it was nice to like be able to sort of walk through with the instructor and get a demo.
So when you were signing up for it, was the scheduling, were there like several a month or like lots of options? Or
yeah, that's a good question. It was pretty convenient. They gave a few times a month, I want to say, and like I want to say they were like different hours too.
Okay.
But it was like scheduling was really, really easy. I remember like, cause they have, all your information, like they have insurance information already. And so they do all the back end work of clearing this with insurance. Cause they're classes run by professionals and they do cost money, but insurance covers the cost. And so, they would like take attendance at the beginning of the Zoom call. And then they did like all that back end work to make sure it was covered by insurance. And so I didn't have to do anything except like put in my name and email to sign up. So yeah, like really easy.
Awesome.
And again, like kind of going into it, I was like, I'll give this a try, kind of see what it's like. And then I was just like captivated. I remember after the call, getting off particularly the Lactation 101 call, and just like being like to my partner, like, oh my gosh, you've got to hear like what I learned.
Oh, cool.
Like he was like, wow, you see, like, you're like an expert now in lactation. I was like, I feel like it. Like, I feel like I'm like, have a lot of good, solid information. So yeah, like super pleasantly surprised by how informative and just helpful the classes were.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, I think that I had posted about Aeroflow on Instagram and you responded like, their classes are amazing. And so I knew you were passionate about it enough to like respond to an Instagram story.
Yeah.
So that's very cool. And I knew they had lactation education, but I wasn't fully aware of the format and everything and the fact that they're live. I mean, that's like having your own, virtual lactation consultant. So that's amazing.
And I had taken like a childbirth ed class, paid for, like it was a community one that I paid for here. And I live in Minneapolis. And it was like, one of the weeks we went over lactation, and it was like similar information, but like free, like I was like, and it also like it was kind of went more in depth because the Aeroflow class was specifically a lactation class, like the Lactation 101 class, what I'm thinking of. So yeah, it was just like very quality, like good information.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm going to add this definitely to our resources on the website and our childbirth course, because we go over a lot of that stuff as well. But the live aspect, I think, is just so great, even if it's a refresher for, second or third time, or you already took a class, just something to kind of get a refresher and ask questions and things like that. So.
And there are some other classes, like the other ones I signed up for but didn't end up making. There was like one on like maternity leave, like, and your kind of like, I think, lactation stuff around leave and like going back to work.
Right.
But yeah, they were all covered through insurance. So
very cool. Well, I'm going to have to reach out to Aeroflow and audit these classes so that I can talk about it more as well. But thank you so much for shining a spotlight on it.
Yeah, for sure. Highly recommend. So when you get that email or that text that says, hey, do you want to also sign up for the classes? You should do it. Because like I said, I was kind of like, oh yeah, okay, whatever, like promotional email for Aeroflow, but.
Right. And we're all paying so much for insurance, like we might as well get as much out of it as we can.
Totally. It was well worth it.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much again, Kate.
Yeah, of course, Fran. Thanks so much for having me on.
Thank you so much again to Sylvia for sharing her story with us and to Aeroflow for sponsoring this episode. Remember to head to aeroflowbreastpumps.com/birthhour to get started with all of their services available through insurance and getting your breast pump through insurance. If you want more information from today's episode, head over to thebirthhour.com and just search for Sylvia's name in the search bar to find her show notes page. Thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed today's show, head to thebirthhour.com and click Become a Member to pledge your support. And as a thank you, you'll get an invitation to join our private Facebook group and access to exclusive episodes. Your vote of confidence and support means the world to me.